Hello everybody and welcome to today's edition of the Daf Yomi. Today's Daf is Daf 16 on the day of Makkos. So just finishing off on the last Daf. And they follow the line of reasoning as was stated. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish disagreed in a case where one said, on my oath I will eat this loaf today. On the day passing he did not eat it. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish both say he is not flogged for taking a false oath. They disagree with regard to the reason that he is not flogged. Rabbi Yochanan says he is not flogged because it's a prohibition that does not involve an action. He violates an oath by failing to perform an action rather than by performing an action. And the principle is, with regard to any prohibition that does not involve an action, one is not flogged for its violation. Reish Lakish says he is not flogged because the forewarning in this case is an uncertain forewarning. One cannot properly forewarn him before he takes the oath, because as long as time remains in the day, he can still eat the loaf at a later time and fulfill the oath. And any uncertain forewarning is not characterized as forewarning. The Gemara adds, and both Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish hold in accordance to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, as is taught in the Braita, it is stated with regard to the Paschal offering, and you shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remains of it until the morning you shall burn in fire in Exodus 12:10. So what does that mean? So siru mimena ad boker. You shall let nothing of it remain until the morning. It is prohibited to leave the remaining flesh of the Paschal offering until morning, as is written, and you shall let nothing of it remain until the morning. One who leaves the flesh until the morning violates the prohibition, but he is not liable to receive lashes. The prohibition entails of a mitzvah that rectifies it, as it is written, and that which remains of it until the morning you shall burn in fire. The Kesef Mishnah points out that although the Rambam could have written that one is not flogged for leaving the flesh until the morning because it does not involve an action, as a halacha is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, instead the Rambam wrote that the exemption is due to the fact that this is a prohibition that entails fulfillment of a mitzvah. He did so to underscore that even a violation of this prohibition involves an action, one is not flogged. Rambam Sefer Kabbalah Hilchot Korban Pesach 10:11. See Sefer Avodah Hilchot Pesulei Makdashin 18:9 and other commentaries on the Rambam. The verse comes to position the positive mitzvah of burning leftover flesh as after the prohibition against leaving over the flesh. To say that one is not flogged for its violation, this is statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yochanan inferred this from the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. The reason he is not flogged is that the verse comes and positions the mitzvah after the prohibition, but if the verse had not come and positioned the mitzvah after the prohibition, he would have been flogged. Apparently, uncertain forewarning characterized as forewarning, as he can be forewarned not to leave the flesh of the offering, even though he would not be flogged were he to burn it. And Reish Lakish inferred this. The reason he is not flogged is that the verse comes to and positions the mitzvah after the prohibition, but if the verse had not come and positioned the mitzvah after the prohibition, he would not have been flogged. Apparently, one is flogged even for violating a prohibition that does not involve an action, as he violates prohibition but without performing an action. The Gemara asks, and according to Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish too, this is certainly a case of uncertain forewarning. Vadai has ras safeku. The case involves both uncertain forewarning and a prohibition that does not involve an action. The two sages hold that only one matter may be learned from the statement of Rabbi Yehuda, as from the statement itself, there's no clear indication as to the reason for his opinion. Why then does he not conclude, based on Rabbi Yehuda's statement, that uncertain forewarning is characterized as forewarning? The Gemara answers, he holds in accordance with the opinion of the other Tana in the name of Rabbi Yehuda. As it is taught in a Braita, if a woman was divorced and remarried soon after, and a son was born 7 months after her remarriage and 9 months after her divorce, it is unclear whether he is the son of the first husband or the second husband. In that case, if this son struck this husband of his mother and then struck that husband, or if he cursed this husband and then cursed that one, and likewise if he struck both of them simultaneously and he cursed both of them simultaneously, he is liable for striking or cursing his father. Rabbi Yehuda says, if he cursed or struck both of them simultaneously, he is liable. But if he cursed or struck them one after the other, even if he was forewarned to cursing or striking each one, he is exempt. Apparently, Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that one is not flogged after uncertain forewarning, since in this case it is impossible to determine which of them is the father. Inevitably, the forewarning is uncertain. The Gemara asks, and according to Rabbi Yochanan too, this is certainly a case of a prohibition that does not involve an action. Why then does he not conclude, based on Rabbi Yehuda's statement, that one is flogged for violating a prohibition of that kind? The Gemara answers, Rabbi Yochanan holds in accordance that which is cited in his name, as Rav Idi Bar Avin says, that Rav Amram says, that Rabbi Yitzchak says, that Rabbi Yochanan says, that Rabbi Yehuda says the name of Rabbi Yosef Galili, with regard to any prohibition in the Torah, if it is a prohibition that involves an action, one flogs for violation, and if it's a prohibition that does not involve an action, one is not flogged for violation. So what's the footnote? Lav she'ein bo maseh. One is not flogged for violating a prohibition that does not involve an action, e.g. one who slanders, takes revenge, or bears a grudge. The three exceptions to this principle are one who takes a false oath, one who substitutes a non-sacred animal for a sacrificial animal, and one who curses another, invoking the name of God. Some early commentators hold that for any prohibition that can be violated without performing an action, one is not flogged, even if he performed an action in its violation. Sefer Chinuch. Others maintain that in that case, if he violates a prohibition with an action, he is flogged. If he does so without performing an action, he is not flogged. Sefer Shoftim Hilchos Sanhedrin 18 to the Mishnah the Melech there. One who substitutes, what does that mean? Teruma. Not teruma, sorry. Tevama, I can't read it. The vowels throw me. Substitution of a non-sacred animal for a sacrificial animal is mentioned in the Torah. In Leviticus 9:7-10. In Tractate Teruma, is, or maybe it's Teruma. Tractate Teruma is devoted to the halacha of substitution. The Torah prohibits the substitution of a non-sacred animal for a sacrificial animal, whether blemished or unblemished. One who does so violates the prohibition and is flogged. Although this substitution is prohibited, if one does not substitute a non-sacred animal for a sacrificial animal, the non-sacred animal is thereby consecrated, while the sacrificial animal maintains its sanctity. The halacha applies to both blemished and unblemished non-sacred animals, and once a substitution takes place, the newly consecrated substitute animal may not be utilized for labor or be redeemed. What ensues for the substitute varies with the type of offering for which it was substituted. In some cases, e.g. a sin offering, the substitute is left to die. In other cases, a guilt offering, the substitute grazes until it becomes blemished. Yet in other cases, e.g. a peace offering, the substitute is like the animal for which it is substituted, is sacrificed on the altar. A non-sacred animal for a sacrificial animal, saying, this animal is substituted for that one, and one who curses another, invoking the name of God. In those three instances, the perpetrator is flogged even though he performed no action. The Gemara asks, although the difficulties that were raised with regard to the opinions of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish were answered, the apparent contradiction from one statement of Rabbi Yehuda to another statement of Rabbi Yehuda is difficult. The Gemara cited contradictory statements of Rabbi Yehuda with regard to lashes, both in case of prohibition that does not involve an action and in the case of uncertain forewarning. The Gemara answered, it is according to Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, the context may be resolved with the explanation that the two sources reflect the opinions of two Tanaim, who disagree in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. If it is in accordance with Rabbi Yochanan, the contradiction is not difficult, as this Braita reflects his opinion, and that one is flogged for violating a prohibition that involves an action, and that Braita reflects the opinion of his teacher, Rabbi Yosef Galili, who holds that one is not flogged for violating a prohibition that involves an action. We learned in the Mishnah then 17a, with regard to one who takes the mother bird with her fledglings. So what's the footnote? Hanota aim al habonim. One who takes a mother bird with her fledglings and slaughters her is liable to receive lashes. If he takes the mother bird and then sends her away, he is exempt from lashes in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis in the Mishnah. If the bird died before he sent her away, he is flogged. This is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, who holds, according to the Rambam's reading, that one is flogged if he is unable or unwilling to fulfill the mitzvah that rectifies the prohibition, even if he did not perform an action that renders its fulfillment impossible. According to the standard version of the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan is of the opinion that one is flogged only for an action that renders fulfillment of the mitzvah impossible. Therefore, one who takes the mother bird is flogged only if he slaughters her. Rambam Sefer Kedush Hilchot Shechita 13:1 Shulchan Aruch Yodei 29:26 and the Biur Gra there. Thereby violating the Torah prohibition, you shall not take the mother with her fledglings. You shall send the mother, and the fledglings you may take for yourselves. In Deuteronomy 22:6-7, Rabbi Yehuda says he is flogged for taking the mother bird and does not send the mother. What does that mean? Rabbi Yehuda maintains that the Torah's command you should send the mother does not address the period after one already took the mother, rather addresses the period before he approached the nest and instructs him with regard to the appropriate conduct in that situation. Send away the mother. Therefore, the prohibition you shall not take is preceded by a positive mitzvah, and one is flogged for violation of a prohibition that is preceded by a positive mitzvah. And that's from the Rashi Me'irin the Riftva. And the rabbi says he sends the mother and is not flogged, as this is the principle. With regard to any prohibition that entails a command to override and perform a mitzvah, one is not liable to receive lashes for its violation. The Rabbi Yochanan says we have only this mitzvah and another where we would be flogged if not for the relevant mitzvah. Rabbi Elazar says to Rabbi Yochanan, which is the other mitzvah? Rabbi Yochanan said to him, you will know when you discover yourself. Rabbi Elazar went out, examined the matter, and discovered the answer, as is taught in a Braita with regard to a rapist who divorced the woman he raped. If he is a non-priest, he remarries her, and he is not flogged for violating prohibition, he may not send away all of his days in Deuteronomy 22:29. If he is a priest, he is flogged for violating the prohibition and does not remarry her. The Gemara states, this works so well according to the one who teaches that the criterion for determining whether one is flogged for violating the prohibition that entails fulfillment of positive mitzvah is whether he fulfilled the mitzvah or did not fulfill the mitzvah. And if he did not fulfill the mitzvah immediately when he is instructed to do so, he is flogged when he fails to do so. But according to the one who teaches that the criterion for determining whether one is flogged in that case is whether he nullified the mitzvah or did not nullify the mitzvah. And one is flogged only if he performed an action that renders it impossible to fulfill the mitzvah. Granted, with regard to sending away of the mother bird from the nest, you can find a situation where he nullifies the mitzvah, e.g. if he killed the mother bird. But in the case of a rapist, if the criterion is whether he nullified the mitzvah or did not nullify it, how can you find a situation where the man is flogged because he nullified any possibility of remarrying her? If he cannot remarry her because he killed her, he'll be executed, not flogged, based on the principle. He received the greater punishment. Rabbi Shimi of Mahoda says he nullified the possibility of remarriage in the case where he received on her behalf the money for betrothal. So what does that mean? If a rapist violates the prohibition by divorcing his wife, the court compels him to remarry her. If she dies before he's able to remarry her, or if she becomes betrothed to another in the interim, the rapist is flogged. This is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. According to the Rambam's version of the text, and once that the mitzvah can no longer be fulfilled, he is flogged. Rambam Sefer Nashim Hilchot Nara Betula 1:7. From another, thereby ensuring that his own remarriage to her is no longer an option. Rav said, this is not a viable solution. If his ex-wife designates him as an agent to receive the money of betrothal on her behalf, it is she who nullifies the possibility of fulfilling the mitzvah for him. As the woman is betrothed only with her consent and he is not liable at all. If she does not designate him as an agent, it is in his power to beset the betrothal on the behalf of a woman who did not designate him to do so. His action is nothing and the betrothal does not take effect. Rather, Rav Shimi of Nahadia said, he nullified the prohibition of remarriage in a case where he vowed in public that it is prohibited for him to derive benefit from her, and it is consequently prohibited for him to marry her. The Gemara asks, this works so well according to the one who says that a vow that was taken in public has no nullification. He is flogged, since by taking the vow he has rendered remarriage impossible. But according to the one who says that even a vow taken in public has the possibility of nullification, what can be said? He can nullify the vow and remarry her. The Gemara answers, the reference is to a case where he vows on the basis of the consent of the public that is prohibited for him to derive benefit from her. As the Meimah says that the halacha is a vow that was taken in public. Even one who takes an oath in public may request that a halachic authority dissolve his oath. One who takes an oath or a vow on the basis of the consent of the public can have it dissolved only for a matter involving fulfillment of a mitzvah, as in the case cited in the Gemara in 16b. See the Ramah, who elaborates on the definition of the matter involving fulfillment of a mitzvah. The Shulchan Aruch writes, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Beinu Tam, that this means that the vow can be dissolved only with the consent of that public, on the basis of whose consent he vowed. The Ramah cited in the response of the Ran rules that even with the consent of the public, the vow may be dissolved only for a matter involving fulfilling of a mitzvah. In order to avoid the potential violation of a prohibition, one may have the vow dissolved even without the consent of the public, as it is clear that the public would not want a prohibition to be violated. In this context, the public consists of no fewer than 3 people, and the case where one says that he is taking the oath or vow based on the consent of so-and-so, so-and-so and so-and-so, if he merely vows based on the consent of the public, without further specification, his vow can be dissolved. Others claim that if he vows depends on many people and states explicitly that he's taking the vow based on the consent of the public, the vow cannot be dissolved, says the Rashba. The Rama writes that if one vows based on the consent of the public and the vow is dissolved, the dissolution is effective after the fact, although with exception of exigent circumstances, one should not dissolve that vow ab initio. The Shach rules that the vow is dissolved after the fact only if he vowed on the basis of the consent of a non-specific public. But if he specified the names of the people on the basis of whose consent he is taking the vow, then even in exigent circumstances and even after the fact, the vow is not dissolved. And that's the Rambam Sefer Hafar Hilchos Shavuot 6:8 Shechlach Yodei 228 21 to 23. Has the possibility of notification. A vow that was taken on the basis of a consent of the public has no notification. The Gemara question Rabbi Yochanan's statement. And are there no more prohibitions that entail fulfillment of a part of mitzvah which one is flogged, but are there others? Before Satan challenges, the Gemara provides a mnemonic, a simon. Since the time of the study orally for many generations, mnemonics were employed to facilitate remembering a series of statements in the order in which they were taught. For cases that it will cite, robbery, classical, and payer. The Gemara elaborates, isn't there the case of robbery, gazel? One who robs another of an item violates a prohibition but is not flogged, as the Torah established that one may rectify the transgression through the fulfillment of the mitzvah of returning the stolen item. He is not flogged even if he burns the stolen item and refuses to pay restitution, as one is not flogged for violating prohibition that entails a monetary obligation. The commentaries on the Rambam discuss at length the reason for his ruling, as in general, in cases where one is liable to receive lashes and pay restitution, he rules that one is flogged and is not liable to pay restitution. Rambam Sefer Zichin, Hilchos Gleider of Aveda 1:1, and Sefer Shoftim Hilchos Sanhedrin 18:2. Where the most one states you should not rob in Leviticus 19:13, and also states and you shall return a stolen item in Leviticus 5:23. Isn't there the case of collateral? What does that mean? A mashkon, collateral. One who lends money to another may not enter his house and forcibly take collateral from him. If he violates the prohibition, he is not liable to receive lashes, because the prohibition entails fulfillment of a mitzvah that rectifies it, as it is written, and you shall return to him the pledge when the sun sets. If one does not fulfill the mitzvah and the collateral is lost or burnt, he is flogged. The Ravid writes that this is an error, and the reason he's liable is that he assumed responsibility for the collateral, and that's from the Rambam Sefer Mishpatim, Hilchot Marva Velova 3:4, and the Mishnah Lamelech there, Shulchan Aruch Mishpat 72:11-97:14, where the most one states, "You shall not come into his house to fetch his pledge," in Deuteronomy 24:10, and then he states, "You shall return to him the pledge when the sun sets," Deuteronomy 24:13. The Gemara continues, and you find that one is liable to receive lashes in those cases, both if the criterion is whether he fulfilled the mitzvah or did not fulfill the mitzvah, and then the criterion is whether he nullified the mitzvah or did not nullify it. According to the first criterion, he is flogged if he failed to return the stolen item or the collateral. According to the second criterion, he is flogged if he destroys the stolen item or the collateral. The Gemara answers there, in both those cases he is not flogged, since he is liable to remit monetary payment for the stolen item or the collateral. As the principle is, one is not both flogged and liable to pay restitution for one transgression. Rabbi Zerah objects to this, but isn't there a case where he is not liable to pay, e.g. if he appropriates the collateral of a convert? Mashkona Shoger. Every born Jew has heirs of some sort related to his father, even if he has no children. Therefore, the collateral can be restored to his heirs after his death. A convert has no Jewish heirs, unless he fathered children after his conversion, which means that if one destroys the collateral of a convert and the convert dies, one has nullified any possibility of fulfilling the mitzvah of restoring the collateral. And the convert died with no heirs. In that case, there is no payment, and nevertheless, he is not flogged. That's the end of the Omid. Thank you for listening, and all the best. Bye.